Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's podcast. We are very happy to be here today, and we'll be going live with a very interesting subject. I'm Rabia. I'm the customer service manager and writer here at Charity Digital, and I'm really excited to be hosting today's webinar to talk to our lovely attendees. Welcome back to our regular attendees, and welcome also to anyone joining for the first time. I would like to mention that I'm working from home today, so I'd like to apologise for any unexpected outages or sudden interruptions. We do have our expert team ready and waiting, fully poised in the wings to jump in if anything should happen. Today, our webinar covers the recent changes to Microsoft's offerings for charities, and we will be talking about how your charity can prepare for the changes and the many options available to you as part of Microsoft's offers to help the charity sector. I'm pleased to welcome and introduce my colleagues. You may be familiar with some of them, and you may be meeting some for the first time. Today, I'm joined by Jonathan Chevalier, our Chief Executive Officer, and Joel Hogan, our Cloud Account Manager. Thank you both for joining us today, and I'm going to hand over to you now, Jonathan.
Thanks, Rabia. Hi, everybody. Great to be here online, and I can see we've got over 100 people here, so obviously a subject that a lot of people are interested in. So I'm going to be talking about the changes that Microsoft announced last week, which is a major change to their non-profit program. In summary terms, this is really about Microsoft aligning their non-profit program more clearly with their strategy, which is very much a cloud-first strategy. I'm going to explain in more detail what this really means in practical terms for all of you out there in your charities, talk a bit about how we can support you in responding to these changes, and also answer any questions you might have. Now, the Microsoft program, like many of our other donation and discounted technology programs, comes as a result of our relationship with TechSoup. Many of you might know about TechSoup, but for those of you who don't, TechSoup are a US headquartered organization, so they're based in San Francisco. And as a result of that, they're in really an ideal position to negotiate on behalf of nonprofits around the world. Really wonderful offers, which they've done with Microsoft, Adobe, Google, lots of other organizations as well. And then they fulfill these programs through a network of partners around the world. And we're the exclusive UK partner. So at various points in this presentation, I might refer to TechSoup, and that's why I wanted to just say a few words to explain a little bit more about them and what they do. So if you're on this call, you probably know something already about what we do at Charity Digital, but you might not understand the full range. So I'm just going to very quickly restate that. So first of all, there's access to software. Obviously, we're here talking about Microsoft today, but there's many other tech companies as well, where there are heavily discounted prices as a result of those vendors either discounting or donating their technology to nonprofits. And sometimes that can result in totally free offers as well. We've also got a growing hardware program. So we've been working with Cisco for a long time, but now we've got some great offers from Dell and Lenovo, and we're looking to add more to that. We do a lot in the area of education as well. So there are some online courses which are available via the Microsoft Digital Skills Center. That's run by TechSoup, and so you can get access to that. We also run directly within Charity Digital a lot of partner and foundation funded programs. So there's one, for example, called the Heritage Digital Academy, which is about training in some detail around digital strategy and developing and delivering digital services for heritage organizations. And that's another area that's growing of what we're doing, that whole education. We provide a lot of advice, both via our customer service desk and actually more generally through our Charity Digital website, where we provide a lot of informational articles, podcasts, and webinars. We also have a pretty active events program. Most of these events are free of charge. And we've actually got our next big one, which is Digital Fundraising Day, coming up this Thursday. So we're going to be helping nonprofits to build their digital fundraising skills more through that event this week. So if you're interested in that, it's not too late to sign up. So that's just a quick flavor of what we do. This lot on this slide in terms of partners, this isn't all of them either. This is just a flavor of the many different partners that we have supporting the access to technology. So we've got more of the very big guys, you know, the likes of Adobe, Google, now Zoom. They've grown enormously over the last few years. But we've also got some really interesting new fundraising offers from the likes of BOP and GivePanel, great security offers from Avast, Bitdefender, Norton and Okta, just to pick out a few. So all of these and many more are on our website. And in terms of the how we support, so I've talked about software, I've talked about hardware growing. We can support you in the cloud software area as well. And that can be the Microsoft, so Microsoft 365 offers, but also others. So the Adobe Creative Cloud, Google for Nonprofits, which is cloud software. And we can help get you up and running with our support services as well on these technologies. So all about this means really we're able to support you, whether you're still on the desktop or whether you're fully cloud-based or whether you're in some kind of hybrid existence at the moment as well. But let's move more to the meat of what we're talking about today. So this is obviously the Microsoft offers for nonprofits, or how that translates in the UK for charities. And by the way, if you've got any questions as I'm talking, do please raise them. Click on the Q&A box and put them in there. So we prefer to keep the chat kind of reasonably free for chat and the Q&A in questions, so we can see those separately. So I'm going to start by just explaining a few key terms. If you already understand all of this, apologies, but what I want to make sure is that we're all very clear about what's going on here. So first of all, I'm going to distinguish on-premise from cloud. So by on-premise, I'm talking about software that is downloaded and installed typically on a laptop or desktop, or if it's server software, you'd install it on a local server. You typically pay for this upfront, one time. The vendor will provide patches and updates, often security updates in particular, and new releases are typically produced every 18 to 24 months. And certainly in the Microsoft world, there are then two flavors they have for their on-premise software, as in commercial flavors. So there's the donated program, and the donated program is where Microsoft have given the licenses to us, and then we charge a small admin fee to cover our operating costs, and then distribute that onto the charities. Typically, you're limited to 50 licenses for product of this, and they cover, you know, the needs of all sorts of charities. And one very important point here is they come with software assurance included. Software assurance, just so everybody understands, if you have software assurance, it will get you free upgrades of the software for the 2 years from which you acquire the software. So a latest example of this is actually just last week, Office 2021 became available through the donated program. If you had bought and installed Office 2019 last year, you would be able to upgrade now to Office 2021 using software assurance. If you didn't have software assurance, you wouldn't be able to then take that automatic upgrade. So it's actually a really valuable thing to have. Discounted software, it's the same products generally, but it's commercially very different, because these are provided with a discount, which is typically 60 to 70% off market price, whereas a donated, the admin fee, being the only cost of that, that typically results in about a 90% discount versus the market fee. So we compare that to cloud. So cloud is software which, as it says, we're not downloading and running it on the machine, we're running it virtually in the cloud. It's normally paid for on a subscription basis, which will be either monthly or annually. And you need an internet connection, stable internet connection, in order to get the updates and to sync. So to access data that's maybe stored in the cloud, to access documents that you've stored there, that other people have stored there. And Microsoft runs both donations and discounts around this. They actually use some slightly different terminology on the donations. They call these grants in the cloud world. The subscriptions, certainly the way product enhancement policy has moved, it all focuses on updating the cloud versions first. So typically they might be more fully featured. Different subscription plans, though, can get you different levels of features. So for the Office 365, there's standard, there's premium. You might have heard of E1, E2, E3 as other plans as well. So different plans have different levels of functionality within them. And I think one of the main things here is, because it all runs in the cloud, yes, you're paying possibly some kind of subscription, but there's very little incremental costs. So if you were running an email service locally, you would have the cost of running a server locally, the hardware it's on, managing all of that. In the cloud, your email, you don't think about the server. Microsoft take care of all of that. So that results often in a lower cost of ownership when you factor in that additional time, hardware, etc. So two important terms there, difference between on-premise and cloud. So very quickly, the advantages of on-premise. So it's a one-time expense. You pay it once, you know what it is, you're done. You don't have to keep paying on an ongoing basis. And the assurance gives you the ability to upgrade for free for 2 years. But there are some disadvantages. So the one-time expense means that it hits you all up front. And typically, once you're beyond that 2 years, if a new upgrade comes out, you're going to have to pay for the upgrade at that point. Also, as I've mentioned actually just previously, the functionality is prioritized now into the cloud products. So you might be lacking some functionality in this. And ultimately, you're responsible for ensuring that your systems are kept up to date in terms of patches and that they're fully secure. Whereas in the cloud, all of that's taken care of by the vendor. So the advantages of the cloud, so the costs are spread out over time. These software updates happen automatically. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you subscribe as well. So let's say you take on 10 extra members of staff or on short-term 6-month contracts, you can turn them on, if you like, buy licenses and turn them on for the period they're with you. And when they leave, you can turn them back off again. So you haven't kind of bought all of these licenses, which you're committed to for perpetuity. You just can turn them on and off as needed. As I mentioned before, no server hardware or software maintenance expenses. Very easy to access your applications and files from wherever you are. If you've got an internet connection, you can log on and access things. You don't need your normal working device. And that gives you really a great level of security. Disadvantages, well, the costs, yes, they are spread, but they keep coming, obviously. You might have some retraining that you need to do from time to time. And for a lot of people, you do need an internet connection. So most of us have that all the time, but if you're in an area of poor connectivity, this can be an issue. So this is particularly an issue actually in some overseas markets, so developing countries, and depending on where you are in the UK and your setup, that might be an issue for you as well. So that's on-premises versus cloud. We're going to move to talk about the changes now. So these are the changes Microsoft is bringing in after April the 4th next year. So this was just again restating the on-premises and the cloud, and literally what is happening as of April the 4th, well, after April the 4th, is that nearly all of the donated on-premises programs are going away. So I'll explain this in a little bit more detail, what this means. So there's one product that's staying, and that's Windows Pro. So that is going to continue to be available, and that's obviously because that is a piece of software that runs on your local machine. In actual fact, you have to have that in order to be able to access the other cloud offers like Microsoft 365 in the cloud. So that product will be continuing, but the others like Office, like Windows Server, like SQL Server, etc., those are not going to be available as a donation anymore after April the 4th. But it is worth mentioning that if you do still need these, as in you need to still buy these, then they will be available at a discount. So with the charity discount that I mentioned previously. So it's not that you can't have them at all, it's that it's going to cost you more money. The other thing worth mentioning is Microsoft do recognize that there are a number of organizations, relatively small percentage of all the charitable organizations that are running things like maybe computer labs, libraries and other environments where there are shared public access, and that actually for those the current cloud offers don't necessarily meet their needs. So some of these organizations need to be able to continue with the on-premise donations, and so they're carving that out and saying that will be able to continue. Now, cloud donations, you can access the cloud donations now, and you'll be able to access them in exactly the same way after April the 4th, 2022. So cloud donations are not changing at all, and you can access all of these directly through Charity Digital as well. So to bring this to life a little bit more, I'm just going to walk through a few practical examples, starting with some of the on-premise offers. So I've got 3 offers here. I've got Windows, Office Standard, and Windows Server. So Windows, so the desktop operating system, you can currently access this for £20 per license, and you can have up to 50 of those, and it comes with software assurance. So that's the donation offer. And the discount offer is £79 per license. If we look at Office, the price here is £39 per license, again, the 50 limit, and it's 153 through the discount program. And on Windows Server, £11 per license on the donation, £73 of discount. So you can kind of see from that there's quite a significant difference between the donation offer and the discount offer. The cloud offer in this example is Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So this is the cloud offer of the Office applications. So it includes all of the Word, Excel, Access, Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, Publisher, etc. So all of that is within that offer. Currently, you can get 10 of those licenses for your staff members totally free of price. So that's the grant offer, as Microsoft are now calling it. And then above that, there is a charge of £3.80 per user per month. And you don't actually need software assurance with that cloud offer, because the nature of all these cloud subscriptions is they automatically download the updates and apply them as you go along. So that's the current situation up to the April the 4th. After April the 4th, you can see that the donated offers of Office and Windows Server have gone away. Windows continues, and obviously the Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and actually other Microsoft 365 plans, because there are others as well that exist, will be continuing. So I'm going to move to questions in a second. I can see we've got a number of them already built up, but I'm going to answer a few of the most common ones in advance, and then we can kind of move a bit more interactively into answering the other questions. Okay, so top questions. What does this mean for my existing licenses? So the important point here is if you've already accessed on-premise donations, be it of Office, SQL Server, Windows Server, etc., you can still keep using those after April the 4th. You know, you own those if you have already purchased those. So you own those in perpetuity. Obviously, eventually they will be obsoleted, well, and they'll be retired at some point by Microsoft. Although typically there's quite a long window on that, so many years before you have to worry about that. So there isn't actually any impact on those existing licenses. How does this change impact my current cloud licenses? In a very similar way, this doesn't impact the cloud licenses. You can keep using them now and after April 4th in exactly the same way. What if I don't have dependable internet connectivity? So the on-premise solutions will still be available after April the 4th. It's just that they won't be available at the donated price. So it's just going to cost a little bit more, but there will still be a charity discount. The other point worth making is a lot of the cloud subscriptions, which include Microsoft 365 Business Premium, include within them the capability to download the applications. So if your internet connectivity is, let's say, more sporadic, so there are periods of time when you're well connected and then other periods when you're not, that type of subscription can work really well because you can sync when you're connected, and then when you go offline, you can use the applications locally on the local device. And how are libraries impacted? So the way it's set up at the moment is libraries can continue to request on-premise donations until the end of December of this year. And what we're expecting to happen is that this offer will then be extended in a way still to be defined so that it will continue beyond April the 4th, 2022. So there's likely to be some kind of separate recognition, separate program after December. We don't yet have details of that because that's still being worked through with Microsoft, but we will let you know as soon as that information is available. So those are the questions that we've already received, but I can see that there are 15 or so already posted here. So I'm going to ask Rabia to now lead us through these questions, and Joel, who knows an awful lot more about this in detail than I do. Joel is like our local expert on all things Microsoft, so he'll be joining to help answer particularly any questions which are beyond my level of knowledge.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for the presentation. It's very, very informative. And I just want to let everyone know that we do tend to publish our resources as well. So if you'd like to take a closer look at the presentation, you will be able to do so. I think it's in about a week or so. I'm just going to jump into the questions now. And hi, here is Joel.
Hello.
Hi. So our first question is about our offline services, and it's one we get a lot, so I'll put this to Joel and we'll talk about it a little bit in some detail. So Alan asks that the installation process for Office 2019 is painful. Will that improve for Office 21, etc.? I'd just like to add, although it's quite difficult, we do support our customers with a range of guides and hands-on support. So I'd just like to stress that please remember you're not alone and we are here to help you. And now I will hand it over to Joel.
Great question. And firstly, agreed. Yes, it is. It can be a bit tricky. I would say at this stage, obviously 2021 release is brand new and we are still currently testing that on ourselves. So I'm sure that we'll be creating some guides shortly if we tend to get feedback that it is, again, a tricky installation. So bear with us on that one, but we hope to have some information soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. Our next question comes from Christopher, who says, we use Office 365, but there are some things we cannot do online, which we can do on-premise, such as Outlook. When will Microsoft sync the capabilities on-premise versus cloud? Oh, that's another good one.
It is a good question. It initially sounds like you may have a version of 365, which may be lacking some of the downloadable features. So I'm guessing by that question, you might be using something such as Microsoft 365 Business Basic, or maybe an E1 license with some lower capabilities. So that possibly could be the reason why you're unable to use some of the features in a desktop environment.
Brilliant, thank you, Joel. I'm going to move on to the question from Mike, who asks, is Exchange affected by this? Microsoft expect on-premises Exchange server to be used in conjunction with 365, although it's not strictly necessary, it just makes management easier. And what does that look like in a kind of post-donation world?
Great question. And our IT manager who's not with us today will certainly be pushing for a hybrid sort of answer to that, where Microsoft have a scheme of sort of moving over to Azure in a hybrid plan. There is some information on the Microsoft websites about that at the moment. But for a bit more further in technical sort of depth query, please feel free to send us an email and we can get some bit more further clarity on that one there for you.
Brilliant, thank you, Joel. Our next question, some brilliantly specific ones today, everyone. This one comes from Dean, who sort of says, although none specifically come to mind, are there any cloud donation products which with software assurance allow on-premise installations affected by this announcement? As in, is the on-premise installability being removed if the cloud license was donated?
Oh, good question, that one. You said that, could we look into that one later? If that's okay.
Sure.
Just
yeah,
get some clarity on that one, just so I can see it as well for myself.
I think we'll definitely take this to
me.
our IT expert in-house and ask him to shed some light on that. Thank you, Dean, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I wasn't sure whether that was that question referring to using maybe an on-premise version of Office and then synchronizing that with a cloud version account. If it was, that should still work, is my understanding, but do please mail in to clarify that to make sure we've understood that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, on-prem can definitely work with cloud options, and we certainly do that ourselves in some options. But yeah, email in so we can try and help you a bit more specifically.
And I think the next one is going to help a lot of our customers because we get this one quite a lot as well. Martin says that we originally obtained our cloud products via ttexchange.org. That used to be us. We're now charitydigitalexchange.org. What is the difference, please, as I had to register anew to be able to join this Zoom presentation? Joel.
Okay, so yeah, we are TT Exchange. We had a name change, a brand change. We've also, since TT Exchange, released a new website, which is how you join today, which is Charity Digital, which is an informational website, which is used to, bring in events like today as well. We provide a lot of articles, general well-being. It's a great website, but it is separate to the exchange, to Charity Digital Exchange, which we now consider more of our transactional website. So if you know exactly what you're after, software or purchasing wise, you would go to the exchange website. But as of today, as you've joined us, for this, this podcast, or not podcast, sorry, webinar, should I say, you've done the right thing by joining Charity Digital and keeping up to all things digital. What would you say, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of add to that, the reason why we have to have two sites, which I recognise is not optimal at all, is it actually goes back to the fact I referred to before, is that a lot of those offers we access through TechSoup, and so that TechSoup can administer this program on a global basis. The Charity Digital Exchange site is part of a much bigger TechSoup infrastructure. So we have to run all of those transactions through that site. But for a lot of the other things we do, which is the educational activity, information, guidance, all the rest, we have the Charity Digital site, which is kind of optimized for accessing information. We can use that for running events as well. Where we're aiming to get to is to more tightly integrate those two sites, but that's going to take us a little bit of time because there's some various upgrades are required before that can happen, and some further investment in infrastructure. But that is our aim longer term. But if you want to get the best of us at this stage, that does mean actually making sure you have an account on the exchange, so you can access all our offers via TechSoup, and having an account which actually is not an organizational account, but personal accounts on Charity Digital. You can have as many of your people within your organization registered through Charity Digital as you like, whereas obviously at Exchange is just one subscription per organization at this point in time.
I just saw your follow-up there question there, Martin. So your order history still exists, but it's in your Exchange account and not your Charity Digital account. So it's still there.
Okay, thank you both. Oh, no, not at all, Martin. We are here to help. And if anyone has similar questions, if you don't get time to ask it today, please reach out to us via email or phone, and we'll be happy to answer. We get this a lot. As people working within the organization, we are also navigating 2 platforms, so we are more than happy to help you. Our next question comes from Patricia, who asks, what if you work on a Mac? I am the treasurer for our charity, Parkinson's UK Cambridge, and work on a Mac.
Yeah, so the great thing about 365 is how it's so fluid. Yes, the answer is yes, it can work on a Mac, no problem. 365 does work on a Mac, as well as sort of PC Windows. And the great thing about 365 is in the past, or what you may have seen now with our donation offers, is that you have to buy a specific license, such as Office for Mac or Office Standard for otherwise. But you don't have that restriction with 365 anymore. You can just, your license can be fluid, and you can change between a Mac, or you can log in via a PC or your phone or a tablet, and it all exists. It follows you, whichever device that you log in that is incompatible to use it.
It really sort of increases your options when you're going 365. It's just so much more sort of fluid.
It is.
Noel mentions, will existing Windows 10 enterprise licenses be valid for Windows 11? Normally these don't upgrade, but I've read Microsoft are treating Windows 11 licensing as essentially the same as Windows 10.
Good question. The initial information received is like they're talking about being a free upgrade, but a lot of that comes back down to software assurance again, I would say at this stage. So it depends on how recently you purchase your Windows 10 license. If you purchase it within the last 2 years, then you should be able to upgrade to Windows 11 at no cost when it is released.
Excellent, thank you, Joel. Our next question comes from Emily, who says, we are currently registered with Charity Digital, but not registered with Microsoft. We would like to get Microsoft 365 Cloud. Are we automatically eligible through Charity Digital, or is there a separate Microsoft eligibility test? Thanks. And that's a brilliant question, Emily, and something a lot of our attendees are going to be interested in. Over to you, Joel.
Also, one of my favorite questions. I love talking about eligibility when it comes to 365. So the answer is no, you're not automatically eligible. I'll try and keep this short, but to the point. So eligibility to access Microsoft's cloud nonprofit offers is not just based on your charitable status, but it's also based on other factors, mainly on your activities as well. So charitable status is not the only way that you're going to be considered to access their offers. There are certain types of organizations who have a mission which is shared with what Microsoft wish to currently support. Now, looking at your Charity Digital Exchange account and what you've received previously could help you guess what the outcome may be, but still it's not automatic. But we can help you on the way. We won't be able to tell you in advance you're definitely eligible or not. We can't pre-validate, but the best thing to do is submit an application with Microsoft for eligibility, which we can help you out with. We can assess that with, and at least get the ball rolling and see what the answer is as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Joel. Our next one comes from Perry, who says, we have O365 as an original donation, i.e. free, and have lots of email users. Will this continue as free?
Good question. I mean, continue. I mean, there's no changes at this stage that we've heard of, but I mean, things do retire, things change over the years as well. But I mean, there's no plan. If you've got an original donation, such as Business Basic or one of the original E1 licenses, you're not going to be suddenly hit with a price right now. There's no plans for something like that at this stage.
Yeah, can I just add to that? I think it's worth mentioning the 85% utilization rule at this point. I think I've got a slide on this somewhere. So if you've got a lot of licenses, there shouldn't be any issue in terms of those being taken away, unless you're not hitting the 85% utilization rule. So Microsoft have brought this in. I think this is because when things are free, people often sign up for lots and lots of accounts that they then don't use. Microsoft are kind of looking at the cost of this and saying, well, we're spending lots of money maintaining accounts that aren't being used in any way, and that's therefore a waste of money. So they brought in this 85% utilization rule, and users who and if people aren't hitting this rule, then they can have their accounts deactivated by Microsoft and could be disqualified from future donation offers. So it's super important to make sure that it's hit. Now, it's not actually very hard to hit this, because all it means is that each of your licenses, so if you've got 100 licenses, let's say, just doing this sort of maths is easy, 85% of those need to be active, and active means that they have accessed a Microsoft 365 cloud service within the past 90 days. So this might mean they've used Microsoft Teams, they've stored something on OneDrive, they've accessed Exchange Online. You know, it's not a high activity level we're talking about, it's just one cloud service was accessed. So you'd need 85 of those 100 to have done that in the previous 90 days. If you're worried about this and you don't know how to kind of check it out, because you can look through the admin portal to kind of understand a lot more of the statistics. If you don't know how to do that, do get in touch with us, and we can talk about how we can help you through that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Jonathan. It's been a very interesting topic when that came through. Just to add to that, finally, think of it this way. If you're a very small charity, perhaps micro level, one person, there's no need for you to obtain 300 business basic licenses, even though they're offering it you. That's one of the reasons we think that Microsoft have brought that down, that rule upon us. But the way to look at it, as Jonathan says, you know, if you have 100 licenses, make sure that they're assigned to at least 85 user accounts to meet the usage requirement. And if you've got some spare left over, just reduce them. And if you've got some more people lucky enough to join your great company, just increase the licenses again. We can help you out with that.
Amazing, thank you. One of the great things about 365 is it operates on a sort of per user per month basis. So you really do have that flexibility, chop and change as you go. And a lot of the charities that we work with will do that. They'll often go up and down with their subscriptions. We're going to move on to the question from Ashley, which I think is another one at the top of everyone's minds, who asks, will Microsoft be pushing the annual and monthly subscriptions to charities like they are in the commercial sector?
I'll take that one.
Great.
So yes, I'm aware that the commercial prices have gone up recently, and so that might be causing some anxiety that a similar thing could happen to charities. As we stand at the moment, we're not aware that there are any plans to do this at all within the charity sector. It's also worth pointing out, you know, that the Microsoft, the discounts on the chargeable subscriptions are actually very significant versus commercial prices. So the Microsoft aren't kind of treating this as a money maximization exercise overall, and for that reason I'm not expecting them to be heavily pushing these up, though, you know, at some point they might say our ongoing costs are going up as an organization, therefore we are going to have to put forward an increase, just as, you know, every other organization that we do business with, whether it be our energy providers who are obviously pushing their prices up a lot, or no doubt our rates. Well, we don't pay rates with charities, luckily, but property rental goes up from time to time. You know, those things do go up, so we can't expect that Microsoft will never increase their prices, but we're not aware of any plans at all to increase those in the short term.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes from Sue, who asks, does that mean that we can only have 10 email addresses for free?
So the answer is no. There are some other granted offers. So there is the business premium option, where you get 10 licenses for free to be used by eligible staff members. You also have another subscription offer called Microsoft 365 Business Basic. Now, it doesn't have quite the same strength and capabilities of business premium, but it still provides you with the main things such as your office applications, albeit the cloud version and not a downloadable version. And those are granted, so you don't have to pay for those. But again, they can only be used by eligible staff members there.
Amazing, thank you. Our next one comes from Chris, who asks, cloud licenses quoted appear to be for SaaS, software as a service. What about pricing for cloud server storage? Is this additional? And if so, any ballpark figure for this per user?
I haven't seen the cloud licenses. I'm not sure which ones you've seen which have been quoted, which look as SAS. So we may need to explore your question a little bit more. Could we get that one? We'll investigate that. We'll respond to you that one a little bit more, just so that we understand your question a little bit more fuller.
I think the one thing worth mentioning is the Azure credits that Microsoft offer.
Yeah.
There are $3,500 of credits that you can apply for as a grant or donation from Microsoft towards Azure services. So I think that's a great donation, really, to ensure that you're not picking up too much in the way of storage costs. Obviously, I know you're talking about server, but at the personal level as well, you get, I think it's a terabyte of storage for each of your users on Microsoft 365. So that's great as well. But yes, beyond that, those two offers, then you will have to pay for storage. As I say, get in touch with Joel if you want a kind of more precise quote on what those current prices are.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, we're going to keep going on through the questions, but we will be hitting 3 o'clock in about just under 20 minutes or so. So I just want to say that if there are still lots of questions, we're going to be creating a PDF with the answered questions from our team in about a week or so, along with the slides and resources. So there will be a lot of documentation ready and available for you. And if we don't get to your question during our session today, we will note it and we will answer it. And if you don't want to wait a week, drop us an email or give us a phone call. I'm going to move to the question now from Brian, who says, what is the nonprofit portal and why is there an offer of a 10-year trial for it, which states that we would need to buy a license for what? The portal. This is really good. And I'd like to add one more thing. Joel, if you could also talk a little bit about your nonprofit tenant, what that is and what domains are. I think that would be really, really helpful.
Okay, I'll do my best on that. Firstly, Brian, just want to say from a personal level, I love this question because after quite a few years in working this program, we're still scratching our heads on this non-profit portal license. What happens, for those who don't know, is when you lodge an application to be validated, so when you create your first account for 365 to be validated for non-profit pricing, you'll be presented these licenses called the non-profit trial, and I believe you get 25 of them. And as mentioned, you have 10 years to use them. And when you do activate them, you have they're used for 30 days. But for what they're actually used for is just to really view the portal whilst you're waiting to be validated. They don't come with any of your office license or any storage. They're essentially, I mean, I'm still trying to find out the use for them myself, to be honest. I don't want to use the term useless because maybe I'm missing something, but definitely not useless. But I'm still trying to figure out that myself. But to, if you want to start obviously using the main sort of features of Office 365, that's where you'd be looking at your purchase services, finding your Microsoft 365 Business Basics or your Business Standard, and so on and so forth. Now, in regards to a tenant, I would say the tenant it's like a portal or domain. I mean, they use the term domain anywhere, which is where all of your licenses, your users or emails, your documents, they all live within this portal, all live within the cloud. So there'll be somebody or some people in your organization who will have certain access rights or global admin rights, who will have the ability to create user accounts. And that user account won't be able to send emails or perform any functions unless you've assigned them a license. And you can obtain licenses via the purchase services portal, or even you can get them via us as well. I hope that explains things a little bit.
Yep, that's great, Joel. The only thing I would add is that I think of the nonprofit portal licenses a bit like a sort of skeleton license. Like it's there, you can see what it is. It gives you an idea of what 365 is. But if you really want to use the product, you're going to need to get some licenses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. So we're going to move on to Steve, who says, are licenses per user or device? I.e., if a user has a desktop and a laptop, do I need to buy 1 or 2 licenses for them? And that's another great question, Steve.
Yeah, fantastic question. And the answer is these are user-based. So that means you can have 1 license to cover all of your devices. Something such as Business Premium, the 10 free ones, that allows you to download Office apps on up to 5 of your devices. But that doesn't mean necessarily you can only use 365 on those 5 devices. You can still access 365 on any device and just use access it via the cloud and use the cloud versions of Office or OneDrive or Teams as another great feature of it as well. So yeah, just to put it simply again, it's per user.
Brilliant, thank you, Joel. Our next one of the things we get a lot from our customers is asking us if questions are daft or silly. And I just want to make it very clear that there's no such thing as a daft or a silly question, because we sort of learn about our products as they arrive. We have to train ourselves and then we inform our customers. So we're constantly in a process of learning so that we can help you. So please don't ever feel silly about asking anything. So Catherine, that's one thing I'd say. And then I'm going to ask a question, which is, are both cloud and on-premises workable on Apple computers? We have trustees who have difficulties with Windows on their Apple PCs.
Yeah, just to echo that, it's definitely not a daft question. They are workable. There are difficulties. There always can be challenges when using sometimes working Microsoft products on a non-PC device. So there can be difficulties with that. But over to 365, as I mentioned in one of the earlier questions, it's extremely flexible and it can easily be used on Apple devices. And you may want to consider moving purely to cloud subscription for your Apple device.
For your Apple devices, I think Joel was going to say that we had a very slight freeze there.
Oh.
That's okay, that's okay. I just want to test, can everyone see and hear me okay? We okay to continue?
I'm just going to stop my video. I've got an internet connection unstable.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think
I'm
we can
still
all
here.
hear you fine, but Joel, that's great if you could keep your camera off. Thank
Absolutely, no problem.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Joel. This is the beauty of doing things live with working with text, kind of thing generally always pops up. Okay, Jackie mentions, does Office 365 cloud version include Publisher for both PC and Mac?
Yes, but you have to get a certain version. So it won't be, it's more what the paid versions or even Microsoft 365 Business Premium would include a Publisher. They're mostly for PCs though. The cloud versions, they seem to be moving away for having it available on Mac as well for those versions. I can double check that for you. I can take that question offline, but I believe it's mostly for PC and for more of the paid subscription levels, which are still at a discount, obviously, for non-profits.
Amazing, thank you, Joel. Okay, our next one comes from John. We do get this one a fair bit as well. We're currently using Google for Mail and purchased the Office suite. We have 10 staff members. Your presentation seems to suggest we could transfer to Microsoft 365 Premium for no cost.
Good question. Yes, there is a way to do it at no cost. Provide if you're confident in knowing what you're doing and moving things over, then yes, there is a way to do that. If you need assistance or anything like that, there's lots of different ways of help out there, either via articles. If you wanted extra assistance, which may involve fees, you could obviously look at contacting us, see what we can help you out with, or consider the help of like a local companies as well, and maybe able to help you out with that.
Yeah, Joel's referring to if you want to migrate mailboxes from the Google suite into the Office suite, which would have some advantages to have all of your applications and infrastructure kind of under one vendor rather than split over 2.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next one comes from Chris, who says, will we be able to continue to access our existing licenses and download software from the Microsoft Volume Licensing Center?
Yes, so your existing licenses you can still access. In the meantime, it's obviously you've purchased them. They're still available for download and reactivation as well. There there are some changes coming to the VLSC, I believe, at some point soon. But if there are any changes like that, we would obviously provide more information about that in some articles at the time. What would you say, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's around the discount program. It's moving off the VLSC, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
The new year, because it's moving into the CSP channel in terms of its administration. So that won't have any impact immediately, but will in the new year, and it'll only impact if you're accessing the discount program, not the donation program, which obviously beyond April is largely stopping anyway.
Brilliant, thank you. And Emma asks, oh, so sorry, I've lost your question. How do we move from Office 2019 on-premise to Office 2021?
Sure.
It was upgrade, wasn't it? That's
upgrade. Yeah. Yeah. So it's it depends on when you've, firstly, it's depending on when you purchased Office 2019. This goes back to software assurance again. If you purchased it within the last 2 years, then your software assurance will cover you to upgrade for free. And you do that by contacting the Volume Licensing Service Centre via your VLSC portal. We use the term VLSC a lot. It's a bit of a jumble of words, but yes, that would be the way to do it, to contact Microsoft via your portal to get that upgrade.
Great, thank you. Our next one comes from Tanya, who says, our documents are saved on a Google server. Is this compatible with 365 Premium? Will we just be able to use downloaded versions of the software, or do we need to just stay with the on-premise version?
I mean, you could, I guess it's a type of migration again, where I'm sort of reading the question here. Gonna go for it.
Yeah, so your documents are on your Google server. Therefore, you probably accessing that through a browser to get to those documents currently. Those documents can be opened and edited within the Microsoft suite. And stored back to your Google Drive, or they could be obviously stored within the Microsoft environment on a OneDrive or within SharePoint. So that if you want to start moving everything to SharePoint, then that's an option that you would have once you subscribe to 365 Business Premium. But you don't have to do that. That's your choice.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next one comes from Heather, who says, we are a charity where everyone is a volunteer. How do we define staff? We also have an E2 license. Will that continue?
A fantastic question, Heather. So the terminology used by Microsoft is staff are either paid or they're unpaid executive staff. So somebody in a leadership position, such as a director or perhaps a trustee. I know many charities have unpaid trustees. So if your volunteers don't meet the sort of the leadership roles, then they at this time aren't eligible for any of the grant 365 licenses, but can take advantage of the 365 volunteer licenses, which do have some great costs out there. I mean, one of them is only like 70 pence per user per month, which provides the bare basics, which most of the time is what volunteers really just need access to. But obviously that depends on your scenario. Regards to E2, I mean, currently they're not going to be changed. I mean, you can't obtain the E2 license anymore. Obviously that was retired a little while back. There probably will be plans at some point, I imagine, to retire that license due to the fact that it hasn't been available for so long. But at this time, we don't have the information of when that would happen.
Brilliant, thank you, Joel. And now Gavin asks, so to be clear, we can continue to download Office acquired a while ago up to the 50 MAK license limit after April 22.
You could get it at the discounted rate still, but then that's not got the 50 Mac license limit.
If you're thinking about the upgrades, obviously the 2-year rule applies under software assurance. If you're thinking, let's say acquired a while ago, so that implies it's licenses you've already got. So yeah, so that's the answer.
Brilliant, thank you both. Jim asks, we have an O365 tenant. Will this system continue with the same as current conditions? We do not currently pay any fees.
Okay, I mean, the system itself, there are no plans to change the system itself, but might be worth you noting what Jonathan said earlier about the 85% rule, and also what I just said about the usage of the licenses by staff members such as volunteers, as we have been advised that Microsoft will perform it's got my word, my
Audits.
Audits, there we go. They will perform random audits. There have been examples of organizations who have found out to be incorrectly provisioning the wrong license types to members of their charity who weren't eligible and have lost their non-profit access before. So do review your current setup and make sure that you are falling within Microsoft's current rules and licensing laws.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next one is quite a process-based question regarding installations, and it comes from Richard. It says, we had big problems with installing Office 2019. I contacted Microsoft and spoke to a very knowledgeable guy. He sent me a link to download a setup file and an XML configuration file, which together allowed command line installation of Office. It just works every time. Will this be available for Office 2021?
Probably goes back to what I said quite a bit earlier, that we haven't done the full testing on Office 21 setup, so we can't advise whether it's a tricky process or easier than the 2019 process. But once we've done our own tests, our IT manager will certainly help us create some articles to help make the installation process a lot more easier for our users.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next one comes from Catherine, who says, we have volunteers who would like to bring on board with aspects of using systems. You mentioned you can turn cloud users on and off. Does this limit the use of their package for other things?
Yeah, so I hope I'm answering this correctly, but if you were to unassign a license from a user account, then that user wouldn't be able to use any sort of features such as Office anymore. They wouldn't have access to OneDrive or use Teams. So if you want to use, if you want your user to have any access to the features of 365 subscriptions, they do need a subscription assigned to them. You mentioned that you have volunteers. If you do have volunteers who perhaps are there short term, maybe come in and out of your company, I'm not sure of your setup, what you can do simply is just if somebody were to leave, just unassign their license and create a new user account and assign them a license to get them active. I hope I understood what you said there.
Yeah, I think the incremental thing to just quickly mention is, obviously, if they've got their own data, like on their own personal OneDrive, and that license is unassigned, that'll be lost. So it's important to make sure that kind of their data is in a proper shared repository, so like a SharePoint file structure, which is actually allowing it to be genuinely shared, and as people can then come in and go out of the organization, they can get to this shared resource and not be dependent on their personal infrastructure through OneDrive.
Brilliant, thank you. Our next one is from Mike, who says, when will we be able to download and install Office 2021?
Now, I think we can all agree.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, our next one is from Tony, who says, we have Microsoft 365 Premium non-profit staff pricing for free for 10 licenses over the last year. It's now due for renewal automatically. My portal indicates that this is still free. Is this correct?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, nice and easy. Okay, so Celia says, hi, I have to use Microsoft Mac and inherited the Mac that I work on. If I take advantage of the donation scheme through Charity Digital, does this create additional issues? Can I still use the scheme you offer, in other words? I'd say yes, broadly you can, but there's probably a few specifics we'd need to ask you about. So we'll probably pick this question up offline. Do you both agree?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Sean says, I was looking to upgrade my Microsoft Server software to Server 2022 early next year. Will it be better to do it sooner to get the better price?
Definitely before April the 4th, or for April 4th as the latest.
Absolutely.
There you go. Thank you. And then Andy says, do you have or plan to develop a guide to moving servers into the cloud? I'm thinking specifically around the estimation of resources you need to license, as this seems to be a difficult thing to get right and can be costly if you get it wrong. Thanks.
I mean, it's definitely something that's discussed. I'm not sure what the concrete plans are yet, Jonathan, but it's certainly been a topic we brought up, haven't we?
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We can talk about that with our editorial team and see whether that's something they can help with.
Okay, so we're doing really well. We've got lots of questions. I'm very aware that we've come up to 3 o'clock now, so I'm going to make this our final one that we answer live. But as I said earlier, we are recording all of your questions. We are going to put out the slides and the resources along with the PDF document with all of your questions answered by our team. So please don't worry. And if there's anything else, then you know how to reach us. You can email us, you can ring us. We are here and more than happy to help. So our final question for the day, before I thank both of our guests, is from Alok, who says, do you know if there are any upcoming changes to the Azure donation program?
None that we know of. So yeah, that's all we can say on that. Just for Rabia wraps, because we're obviously missing some questions. If we haven't covered your question, do please feel free to get in touch with our customer service. The details being on all these slides, and we can see how we can help you. And in terms of these changes, I guess the main things to think about are: do you want to take advantage of the on-premise donation program whilst it's available? In which case, do feel free to do so, but don't leave it too late because you might miss out. Alternatively, if you want to move to the cloud and you want our help doing that, again, please get in touch and we can help you do that as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And before we fully wrap up, I'd like to thank Jonathan and I'd like to thank Joel for both of your insight and guidance with us. I'd also like to thank our colleague Sasha, who's in the back as our producer. And before we completely finish, are there any final words that either of you have for our viewers today?
Go on, Joel.
No, just a big thank you, and some brilliant questions that come through. I've been really put through some of the tests today, but that's all fun and learning for me, so thank you.
Yeah, likewise, thanks for me. I've already done my sum up in terms of getting in touch if you need our help. I hope this has been useful in terms of illuminating further the subject of these changes.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you again. Thank you to all of our attendees. Thank you for all of your questions, all of your insights. We're learning about changes to the program. We're relaying information as soon as it's received by our team. We're all in this together, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye.